Good afternoon, Dubai. You're with me, Jessica Rasic, as your host of the new MCC podcast series, Inside Buzz. We welcome you to our first show and thank you so much for tuning in with us today. Inside Buzz focuses on events and issues pertaining to the communication and media industry by engaging the views and opinions of experts in their relevant fields. Our first episode discusses how to develop and establish a strong radio presence in a competitive media landscape, particularly within the UAE. Now, I have two very special guests joining me in the studio today. The first guest, you'll probably recognise her as the cute voice that keeps the day going from 10 to 1 p.m. on Radio 1. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's the one and only Sheena Kay from The Sheena Show.
Oh, that's a nice introduction.
Thank you for being with us today. It's only true. And our second guest, of course, you've seen him on you've heard him on Radio 1, you've heard him on Radio Spice, and you've probably seen him as the host of Deal of the Day for last year's Dubai Shopping Festival. Now, he is also the program manager and news head of Suno 102.4. Ladies and gentlemen, we present Dev Halder.
Ta-da!
Thank you so much to both of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and talk to us today. So obviously, starting off, everyone that's come to Dubai has an interesting story to tell, and we'd love to hear both of yours. So what made you come to the UAE?
Would you like to go first, Deb?
Ladies first.
Ladies first, all right. What made me come to the UAE? That's that question that I always dread that people ask me. I don't really have a particular reason. I mean, I grew up in Canada in a very small town, and I spent my whole life there. I went to university there, and I just felt like, the world is such a big place that life's too short to just stay in one place. So I kind of wanted to go out and explore. And my dad had come to Dubai a number of times and kept saying how much he loved it. So I just felt like, okay, let me go check it out. And I came here with no job, no friends. I stayed with some family for some time, and I was lucky to get a job with the radio station. And the thing is, though, I never even dreamed about doing radio ever. It never even crossed my mind. In fact, my whole entire life, people used to make fun of my voice and tell me I sounded like a little kid. So the thought never even crossed my mind. And I did my degree in business and marketing. So I actually started working for Radio 1 and Radio 2 as part of Gulf News Broadcasting in the marketing department. And eventually, I think they realized that I talked too much. And instead of listening to me chatter around in the office and distract people, they decided to put me in this little box and say, just go talk as much as you want in there. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
To be more productive. Well, it's a good segue from business into media. And what about you, Dev?
Not such an interesting story. I was an old radio hat back then, and there was a job offer that came by. And since my wife and I, we were just newly married, we said, great, I think it's going to be a good idea if we have a change of scene, change of country, and start all over again and see how it works. Now, mind you, to every radio presenter who's obsessed with himself or herself, their voice and their work and their markets, this was a bit of a sort of a shock, when you suddenly decide to leave your old sort of established market, go into a brand new market to sort of uncharted territory. But I think that was where the entire excitement was. And so here we are in Dubai.
Beautiful. And obviously, this is the interesting thing about both of you. You both sort of started in different fields. It wasn't really radio or media. So what was your inspiration going from advertising into PR?
I wanted to grow my hair.
That was how does that link to radio? It's faceless.
There's got to be a story there. Let's hear it.
Totally. But then again, when you say faceless, I agree, but I also disagree. I mean, to a lot of people, the moment they're hearing a voice, a sound, they have an imagination that's conjured in their heads. Of course, personal and individual as it comes. Anyhow, coming to my hair story, I was working in this agency and I just decided to grow my hair. And my CEO threw a fit, called me in and said, strands of your hair are on your collar and don't want that. I said, I'm growing my hair. He said, no, you can't. I said, but I really want to. He said, well, you'll have to look for another place. I said, okay, I quit. So I quit and I joined the radio station because I wanted to grow my hair.
That's a very interesting story.
That cannot be the real story.
Ask anyone.
You just wanted to grow your hair.
Yeah, I was slightly whimsical when I was younger. I'm old and mature and a lot more stable now. So yes, I wanted to grow my hair.
I was thinking it could have been a Sunsilk commercial or something that inspired you to grow your hair. But
so yeah, for 1.5 years, I was the object of every woman's envy, and I realized that wasn't really the way to be. So I locked my locks off, but I stuck to radio. It's 11 years now, and I'm happy.
Well, you've obviously
happily married to radio. Sheena, I
So
love
you're
your hair.
cheating on your wife with radio, is it? If you'd like to put it that way.
Almost.
Well, it's good to be in a healthy commitment with both your professional and personal life. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Correct.
And you've obviously both been progressing very well in your respective positions. Sheena, you've gone from co-hosting to being your own host of a radio show.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going fantastic. You've got over 4,000 likes on Facebook, including myself as one of them. And Deb, you've also gone from hosting your own show to managing other people's shows. So how have you both found these transitions from...
Ladies first again?
Sure.
For me, it was actually, first of all, just getting to be on the radio in the first place was a huge challenge for me because I knew nothing about it. I had had no training, I had had no experience, and I kind of just jumped in on the breakfast show as the co-host. And it took me some time to just stop sitting and just going hee 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 every few minutes, and to gain like some comfort levels and confidence to be myself on the radio. And then the transition to doing my own show. There were quite a few factors. First of all, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning is not fun.
Oh.
And as much as I had fun doing the breakfast show, and it was just literally 4 hours of joking around and laughing and a great time, I also felt that I needed to have a balance, to have a normal lifestyle as well, and to wake up at a normal time and be able to actually communicate with people after my show and be coherent. So I started the Sheena show, I think about almost 3 years ago now. And it's just been, it's taken on wings of its own. I try and make the show all about the listeners instead of, I know it's called the Sheena Show, but it's not all about me. I promise you I'm not narcissistic like that. But no, it's about the listeners. It's about interacting. It's about a community. And I actually find the best part of it for me is that I learn so much every day from my listeners. And every day is different. Every interaction just takes on a new level and takes the show in a different direction. And for me, it's just been awesome to be able to do that and kind of go with the flow wherever it takes me instead of working with someone who you kind of have to always keep things a little bit more organized and keep the flow going because it's a busier show on breakfast. So that's one thing I really like about doing my own show and having a show in a time that allows me to have more freedom.
And you're saying to obviously engage your listeners more, but what factors do you take to engage the said listeners in your shows?
I like to think that I'm approachable in the sense that I treat the listeners. I speak to a lot of radio presenters. You might find they sometimes talk down to people. But I try to make sure that I'm just talking to people as if they were my best friend in the car with me. You know, if someone is driving around listening to the radio, I want them to feel like I'm sitting next to them and we're having a chat. So for me, I try and make myself approachable, and that allows people to just call me up and tell me the most random things about their day or about their life or whatever it is. So they'll come to me for something, and then we can use it on the show, and we get everyone involved as a community instead of just a one-way communication. It becomes a community communication as well.
So the interactivity is
yes.
really important. And Dev, what do you feel as well?
A couple of things that I'd add to what Sheena said. I totally agree with what you did, actually, what you said. Radio, I think, one of the biggest travesty of radio is that people think that it's very easy. It's not. There's a discipline to it. Radio is not about, sitting in front of a mic and talking. So there was this time where, where people...
Like, really? Because that's what I do every day. But okay.
Not all
doing
about.
It wrong.
Not all about. And there are a lot of other things that come into it. For example, developing a music taste or developing a sense of timing. I've always believed, and I've always championed the cause that on radio you really need to know when to hold back. Brevity being the wit of soul and and all of that. So, yeah, I mean, I really believe in that. So, despite the fact that there might be a good story to tell, but somehow or somewhere on radio, it's beautiful if you can say it simply. So I think that's the biggest take back as far as I'm concerned for radio is concerned. And the other fact is that when you don't have a visual medium, where even if I'm shaking or waving my hands in the air,
like now,
yes,
but no one can see it.
You can't see it,
of course,
but you can feel it in my voice. And I think that's the beauty of radio. And so from going to working in a handicapped medium to fully exploiting the way it works and the way you can reach out to people, it's absolutely crazy, but it's wonderful.
And so how do you actually reach out to these people, though, obviously, besides your voice? What do you actually do to involve the community?
Various things. I mean, as far as I would personally like to feel that despite the fact that I work for an out-and-out Bollywood radio station, I do feel and understand that it's all about community building. So if on radio and on a particular show, you're not doing local connect, I am not speaking the right language. I'm not able to connect to my target audience. If I'm not giving you, how you should plan your evening tomorrow, and go watch a great theater show or something of that sort, I'm missing out on a lot. I mean, I'm not even talking about what my target audience is missing out on. And I'd want to also sort of add to what you said about Sheena, when you said about talking to people, and some hosts talk down to people. Totally agree with you on that one. That sort of seriously offends me. Sitting on the other side of the table or on the other side of the microphone does not give you the right to talk down to people. It's an extremely powerful medium. You really should know how to be able to express yourself correctly. And my favorite example is whenever we meet a child, we always speak Gugu language. Yeah?
So yeah, we do. Yeah.
So I talk to my cat like that too.
Close enough.
I know. So as a radio station, we're no different than an ad agency for that matter. We've got to speak the language the target audience requires you to do.
So radio really is theatre of the mind.
Totally. And that eliminates the whole talking down bit. If you really know what you're talking about and you're speaking your target audience's language, I think you're on the right track.
So who actually determines the content of each show, and what are the processes that you need to go through every day to actually get your show together and put it on air?
Okay, so I think I'm lucky in the sense that I have quite a bit of freedom in terms of the content of my show. Obviously, when we have sponsors and competitions that are paid for, we have to kind of go with pretty much what the client's influence and what we want there. But in terms of content, every minute of my life, everything that I do, everything that I see, everything that I read, everything that I eat, everything, somehow I'm always thinking, okay, is this interesting for people? Do you think people want to hear about this? Can I talk about this on my show? Do you think, how can I put this in a way that will be,
Correct.
like you were saying earlier, in a way that's kind of economic when you think of economy of words and stuff, and just random things like that. For example, one
things
day
that people can relate to, right?
Yeah, things that people can relate to, and just things that will stick in their mind. For example, little things. I read an article one day about how many, those shopping carts in the mall, in the grocery store. Yeah. I read an article talking about how the handles have more germs on them than a toilet seat in a public toilet. And I thought it was disgusting. So it's like, okay, I have to tell my listeners about this,
What do you think?
So I mentioned it like years ago on the show. And then a few years later, I got a phone call from some guy who was visiting the UAE. And he said, listen, I was here a few years ago and we were listening to your radio station. And ever since we heard that show where you said this, my daughter will take hand sanitizer and clean those handlebars every single time we go to the grocery store. And he's like, it's been years, but I just wanted to tell you that stuck with us. And I was thinking, oh, okay.
That's also the power of radio.
Little things, honestly.
Absolutely.
Well, like you mentioned before, obviously, on radio, I feel, perhaps you guys could enlighten me, but I feel that it's still relatively new in Dubai, so it's obviously a blossoming industry, and you have the invisible wall that is radio. So thanks to the anonymity and hiding behind the screen, if you will, it gives you the liberty to express yourself freely and discuss issues sort of more openly, perhaps, than what you would have on television. But how do you address censorship laws within the UAE? How do you make sure that you're sort of UAE safe, friendly environment within your content, within your shows?
That's a very, very pertinent question. That is something I think most radio stations, and I stress on the word most radio stations lack here, which is a sort of a cultural orientation or some sort of a sensitivity. I think it's a radio person's instinct. I started reading a lot more about the region just to figure out exactly what I can say and what I cannot.
More so what not to say, I guess.
Precisely. Precisely, because that's important. Now, for example, politics. If you're talking about politics here in the UAE, there's literally no sort of
guidelines,
worries about discussing anything. So you could be discussing US, you could be discussing Pakistan, you could be discussing Afghanistan, or a war scenario, or the elections in India. There is just no problem about that. But then, for example, if I were to be sitting in India doing a show and trying to discuss politics, that'll be my last show.
Yeah, of course, which kind of similar here sometimes. You have to be very careful.
Yes, so one's got to be extremely careful about what you say and how you say.
There are actually a few things. I mean, I was lucky when I first started that I was working with DJ Bliss at the time, who is an Emirati, so he kind of guided me as to say, don't talk about this, or do talk about this, or this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. But there have been moments when, you get in trouble. I mean, there have been radio presenters who've been kicked out of the country because they've done things that were inappropriate. But I've had moments where I used to do a competition called the One World Challenge, and I may have called a particular Gulf in this region by the wrong name.
Oh, dear.
It's known as 2 different names. I'm not going to get into it because
Yeah.
I don't want to get in trouble about it again. But
yeah.
basically, I just read it online. Okay, this Gulf, but really in this region, it's not accepted as that name. It's called the
Troubled
Arabian
waters.
Gulf.
Yes.
So
I know which one you're talking
yes,
about. Yeah.
exactly. So, but it's a learning experience for us too. And if you're not, trying to insult people on purpose, usually people can be a little bit forgiving and understand that you really didn't mean any harm.
Exactly. And I think somewhere we've also got to sort of factor in the fact that the radio industry is really in its nascent stages. It's probably crawling or toddling about. So it's going to take some time for the little baby to stand up and start walking.
On its feet, of course.
So yes, and we can't expect this industry to start running before it can walk.